Hello and welcome to race 3 of the dirt racing series. This time we're up on the team time trial on 3 Villages Loop, doing 3 laps of it today. I'm going to be following the B Plus again in Zone 2 Stelvio division. Should be a very interesting race. We had a bit of a turnaround in the last race with the table being turned upside down through the middle section. So we've got a lot of tight teams. It's going to be very interesting seeing them chasing each other down and how it gets on in the TTT. Just take a look at the team standings for you now, so you can see what I'm talking about with how close it is. So we had What Fabric winning again, so that's puts them comfortably in first place, though Valhalla are pretty close, only 4 points behind. That can easily change over the next 3 rounds. I think both will have very strong performances today. In the team time trial, it'll come down to, who can be the smoothest through this, who has, can actually get the full team out today is going to be quite important. But then as we look a bit further down, we've got DZR, Danish Swift Riders, in third. Some great team tactics over the past 2 weeks. ESRT, Swedish team, in fourth. Very experienced bunch of riders. And again, they normally do very well. Their Frappe team's the reigning world champion TTT team. So we'll see how they get on in this division. Should be very good performance across the board. In fifth, we've got Dirt Cobra. Well, shall we say in joint fifth, we've got Dirt Cobra Kai, Belgian Zwift Riders, who are our second place team last season, and Dirty Gooses, who are our top team last season, all joint on 30 points, just 1 point behind ESRT. And just behind we've got Dirty Box, who were second in the first week, but didn't have as great performance on Tuesday. So they're just 1 point further back in 8th. Then Rhinos, another point back in 9th. Dirty Eagle Fang, little bit of a drop off there in 10th. And we've got Hisp just behind them, skid marks. Not sure which team they are. Just have a quick check. Can't remember what overriding team they are. But yep, and then we've got a solo rider from Jet at the bottom. So it'll be very close, and there's a lot to play for today. Just taking a quick look at the individual standings for you. So we've got Rainer Beckers from What Fabric currently in first place. Arnie Danielson, Valhalla, in second place. Both quite tight with each other, taking a lot of finish points, although Arnie's taking a bit more of the sprints, whereas Rainer Beckers has been a bit more focused on the KOMs and the segment points. Then we've got Marshall from Cobra Kai in third, Vegard Huygen from Valhalla in fourth, and then the swarm of What Fabric riders with Schmeck in fifth, Simon Matros in sixth, Joachim Kjellgaard from DZR also in joint sixth, and then Christopher Herzl in eighth, the individual top rider last season. So this goes quite far back, lots of really strong performances. And as you can see, the What Fabric team, lots of riders in there, which is why as a team they're at the top. And it's the top 4 riders that have been scoring each week. And it's the top 4 riders over the line today that the 4th rider is going to count for the team score. So heading onto the course, hopefully some of you are familiar with it by now. We're going to be on the 3 Villages Loop. It's a bit of an unusual TTT course, but really interesting. It's practically all either climbing or downhill. We start off with a kind of slightly gentler flat section, but it is downhill. And so you'll want teams to get out early and quickly and make sure they're together. They want to get their speed up early and then start heading downhill without having kind of eased into it too much. They'll get a bit of a rest once they're together flying on the downhill, and they're straight into this climb. Maybe about an 8-minute climb, and it's kind of in 2 sections. So you get the first section to the temple, and have a little bit of a rest. Then, as you see on the bottom map, you have these couple of hairpin bends leading back into the kind of temple villagey section, and then it flattens out. You've got a bit of a section kind of through the flats where you aren't getting too much time, but it's all important that you kind of come over the top as a team rather than having gaps, because those gaps open up so quickly over that top lip. Then you want to be pushing for a little bit. You'll have a little bit of a bump just after or before the bridge on the river, and then it's pretty much a downhill all the way back round. There's a few little bumps in the middle which are important to punch over, and with these B plus riders we'll see a lot more of the punchiness over those flatter sections, maintain the speed than we did in the earlier C division. But it's going to be an interesting dilemma for teams. Do they kind of work hard on the downhill, or do they just really sit in and then attack the uphill? Personally, I think for the Bs, the B pluses we have here, it's going to be more important for them to do a bit more work than other divisions on that downhill. They need to focus hard and really attack the uphill, but in some divisions you can focus a lot heavier on that uphill. I think B plus is going to be that awkward in between, where the A's, some of them can fly up that uphill. They're not really restricted. And then as you get into C's, it's going to be they have a much higher kind of advantage on the hills. Like the impact they have by what they do will make a bigger impact on the hills than it will for these B pluses. So it'll be interesting to see how teams get on there. But as I said, I think the important things are going to be kind of how they treat the downhill, what they do to try and maintain and gain speed there, and how they treat the little bumps, as all these teams are very experienced and they know what they're doing. So any little gap is going to start to cost team places. If they let a big gap open up, it can cost them 2-3 places, especially with how tight it's been. So we'll just join the live stream here. Just give a little shout out to Simon. Miss him too. Be good to see a lot of you back and riding in the next series. So we set off, we're going to have time delays, as you can see on the left hand side. So we're on the current system team time trials, where we just wait about a minute, then we'll have 30-second intervals between each team setting off, and we're on normal bikes. So hopefully no one's ended up on a time trial bike, but we'll see teams setting off at 30 seconds intervals, and then you'll be able to track them on the right hand side. I'd like to see teams kind of pushing hard until they get up to 40 kilometers an hour, if not higher. A lot of teams kind of get into the 20, 25 kilometers an hour and then just settle down, and you do lose a lot of time. You know, maybe it's not as big as some people might say, but you're still gaining, you know, maybe 2-3 seconds if you carry on pushing all the way up, and you know, that can really add up. And especially going into a downhill, if they can maintain that speed all the way into the downhill, they're going to carry it. When you're going onto downhills, you want to attack them early, get your speed up, and then let it carry you. So you want the Watt Fabric riders seeming to go a little bit early. Not sure what's quite going on there, a little sneaky one for them. But they've slowed down, they're not really gaining an advantage. That's the exact right thing. You know, sometimes things like that happen, and there's allowances as long as you don't take the mick of it. And see, he's just chilled out waiting for his team to push on. So it looks like Watt Fabric have 7 riders. So one thing that will be interesting is how many rides teams are able to get out. They're allowed to have up to 8 because, you know, we want everyone to take part. We don't want teams to be kind of saying, oh, we just want our best 6 riders. It's a team series, so it's about everyone. So we want everyone to be able to count, which is why all 8 riders are able to take part today. But we'll see teams with a variety of numbers. And, you know, those who can get 7 or 8, I think will have a bit of an advantage. And, you know, if you're starting to get to 5 or 4, it will be a bit of a disadvantage compared to others. As you see, all the Watt Fabric, all but 2 of the Watt Fabric riders on the classic Venge with disc wheels, which is going to be the most aero possible. As you see them working hard now, they're onto the downhill, and they can just start to relax in the pack. See, they've done exactly what I'd expect, having just one rider punching hard at the front. And because it's on a downhill, there's a lot more recovery. So normally, you'd see riders, especially in Cat B, you're looking at about 5 watts per kilo for heavier riders, up to 5.2 for the real top teams. You know, if they're lighter, maybe they can go up to 5.5, especially with 8 people. But on the downhills, because you get so much recovery, you want to actually do shorter pulls and pushing a bit harder than normal, because you can recover from it. You can get much more rest. See, they're all coming through this little 3%er, pushing hard. It's exactly what I'd want them to see, just try and carry the speed they've built on the downhill. It's a really good start from Watt Fabric. But as we see here, Valhalla already 5 seconds up. Really big push from them. So we see Vegard Horgan just taking it in the front, leading them out. Here they're just not quite the same level punching over this little 3%er than maybe Watt Fabric did. So imagine they'll lose a second. There we go, we can see 26 seconds now to Watt Fabric. We're back down to 25, but you know, they're just losing a little bit of time there. And you know, we're talking half a second, but they start to add up. There's lots of these little bumps, and every single one you kind of want to be gaining a little bit of time, not losing it. We've got a nice little order, not quite a clear 1, 2, 3 yet, but it's definitely starting to tend that way, which is good to see. You know, all 8 riders for Valhalla, which will be really telling later on. So jump back to Belgian Zwift riders, our 2nd place team from last season. So they've got 7 riders from what I can see, which is good to see. It looks like TZR don't seem to have a team out. That's a bit surprising. Let's hope nothing major's gone wrong for them there. See Rhino with 4 riders. It's going to be a very long day out for them. But you know, it's good that they've gone for it. Pushing hard, but you can see how much beats it up. I mean, I say that actually, Rhinos would have started a minute behind BZR, so they've actually allegedly taken a little bit of time on them. But I don't think that's going to last too long, especially as soon as we hit the climb with those numbers. So you see again, lots of teams just going above what you'd normally expect them to be pulling. You know, for a heavier 90 kilo rider, we're looking at about 47, 48, if we're going 48 kilometers now, which will be probably the target for the top teams, maybe a bit more like 47 because it's a longer course. At 47, a 90 kilo rider, you're looking about 435 watts on the front. You know, for a 60 kilo rider, maybe about 410, 415 at the same speed. And so you can see these rides are kind of pushing just a bit above that on the downhill, or at least they were. But you see now they're just changing over on the 230 mark, as you'd expect, doing 30-second pulls. So they've lost a little bit of time to Valhalla. You see the 33-second gap, and Valhalla have really gained on Watt Fabric. So it's a really impressive start from Valhalla. They look like they're up a bit. It seems they're really working hard in the flats, but as we saw earlier with the Galaxy team, some teams will just really relax on this flatter section and attack the climb much harder. So we'll see how teams are doing with this. See Chris Herzl coming through to take a pull. And it's really important here when you come through. See Chris here has come through quite aggressively. And if you look, Raynebeck has just managed to grab his wheel, doing 5.7 watts per kilo. But Chris there almost got away. And you know, if you let that gap open up, if you come through too aggressively, or your second wheel isn't in place, then you can lose time again. Your front guy's going to be off. They're not going to be getting any work that pulls the team along. You can cause issues. Just seeing a little gap starting to open up between Don Mattress and Michael. So it's really important that when you come through, you do it smoothly and second wheels are in place. I think that's a bit interesting. Schmeck there doing a little bit too much work at the back, maybe just trying to get back on as we start to come into the segment. So this is a bit of a long segment. We start off with these 3-4%ers. And 3-4% are kind of, it's important to maintain your speed through this. There's a lot of draft available, you know, at 40 kilometers an hour, and we're going to stay this way until we hit the bridge over the river. Through there, it's going to be a real punchy section. When you get to the top of that, there's another flat section that you can kind of come together, and you want to get a bit of recovery. Trust your stronger riders to lead you through there, and then run to the kind of draggy climb, which finishes it off, which again will be slightly draftable, especially in B+. So you'll want stronger riders or lightweight riders for those teams that have them on the front and doing a bit more work there. Let's go back to Valhalla. So they're 5 seconds ahead of Watt Fabric at the moment. And you know, all race they're going to be looking at those numbers, trying to chase them down, keeping it under 30 seconds ahead. See a great pull from Vegard there on the front. But again, see, they're just starting to open up this gap. And the difficult part here is Vegard's a very experienced TTT rider. So you see he's just dropped in that second wheel gap. He saw that Bosco Uribe off the front had just opened up more than 5 meters, so instead of immediately dropping to the back, Vegard just sat in there, which is absolutely textbook. Really well done to him, really switched on riding. And now he's just dropped to the back after Greg Pierce came and filled the gap. He realised, okay, it's all safe, I can drop to the back now, get some recovery. It's absolutely perfect, and what we like to see. It's really important that you have that communication. If you know that, say, you've just pulled, your second wheel's coming through to take their pull, and suddenly a 5-10 meter gap's opening up behind. It's really important that instead of just dropping all the way to the back, you fill it, bridge, allow the group to come through, then go. And it's little moments like that that can make a huge difference for a team. Because if that gap had opened up, it could cost them 2-3 seconds instantly. You know, the gap at 6 seconds, that's going to hurt them. See Watt Fabric really punching through this section here. All up about 6 watts per kilo. Yeah, they're the numbers we're going to kind of expect to see. Generally, the top end of B, we're going to be talking about climbing at 5.5 for these longer climbs. Getting as much rest as possible in between. We've seen, is it Niels there? Just letting that wheel go to Simon on Mattress. That's going to be a bit frustrating for them, as Simon here is just going to have to sit up and rest. He's not going to be doing anything to help the team here. So he just wants to ease off a little bit. Not totally drop off. There's no point in wasting the speed he's built. But it's a difficult position. He's done so much hard work, but he's not helped the team because people haven't held his wheel. Possibly not through fault of his own. So see Michael taking the front here. And through this section, you've just done the climb. It's now into draftable again. You want your strongest riders coming through, letting everyone else get some recovery in. You see, down to about 4 watts per kilo. So, they're not getting much rest at all. It's going to be above threshold for them. They're still going to be hurting. But it is important they kind of get some rest through these sections. before they punch up the climb again, just take the sharp left turn. You want to build a little bit of speed here, and then I've got this long grind. Now you've got 2 corners, then you can kind of see all the way to the top of the climb, and it is tough. Never feels as bad as certain other climbs, because you do get these points of rest in between. It is very draftable, but when you go on the last lap, you know these rides are really going to be hurting up there. So yeah, about 5.5 to 5.5 on the front here. That's exactly what we expect to see on these 4% sections. It's enough to kind of be pulled up. There's going to be some draft effect. And that's one of the kind of things for bees. If you push harder, you're going to get more draft, so it is beneficial, but you've also got to be a pace that's sustainable. And being first lap of a 3-lap race, you're going to want to get every single rider over, especially onto the downhill. Just drop back, take a look how Valhalla are dealing with this. So that gap has opened back up, so ZwiftPower are now 1 second ahead of Valhalla. As we see, Valhalla just a little bit slower on the climb. They've done a lot more work on that downhill. And on the climb, they're just a little bit more relaxed on the front. But, you know, they're staying together nicely. It's a nice big bunch, which is what I want to see. When we're on these uphills, there's no point kind of letting it stretch out too much. You want to be tight as a bunch so gaps don't open up, and when you get over the top, you can instantly push on again as a group. It also means if someone's struggling, you can instantly see them drop back. See Arnie there, after he took his pull on the front, he's just dropped back, and people can be aware. We know instantly, right, he's a bit tired. Let's make sure he's not falling totally off. Whereas if you're in a long straight, the guy at the front, or the girl at the front, is going to just keep pushing. They won't know how far back everyone else is. So again, you can see BZR only 2 seconds back on Valhalla, which puts them, you know, another 2 seconds back on ZwiftPower as well. So it's so tight at the front, and it's going to stay this way most of the race. We'll have to give apologies, as I might have to leave slightly earlier. Hopefully we'll see the first 4 or 5 teams finish at least, and maybe get some early results. I'm going to have to shoot off today. You see Killian there, Van den Beel. This is exactly what we'd expect from your lighter-weight rides, which is exactly what he's doing. On these climbs, they want to be taking the lead. You know, 0.5 extra watts per kilo for him isn't going to be too much compared to the rest of the riders. And, you know, he might only be about just above his 5-minute pace, if not at his 5-minute pace. Whereas the rest of the riders are going to be well above it if they were taking the lead. And so the rest of the course, you'd expect them to actually look after him. Being a lightweight rider on the downhill, he's just going to be hanging on. Him pushing the front, he'd be needing to do 7 watts per kilo or so to really increase the pace of the group. So you're better off saving the really lightweight riders on the downhill, possibly even on the flats, just letting them sit in and then having them lead the entire climb as best as possible. Because, you know, if he's doing 5.5, then the rest of the group will be able to do about 5 watts per kilo behind him. That's perfect. See, they're just coming over the top, nice and bunched together. That's exactly what we like to see. And then you want to see people like Willem, Van Cutsem from the back, Bessem's all pushing through here. Just getting a nice little blob as they come into the downhill. And then getting straight back into pull order as soon as you can. So we drop back and have a quick look at Cobra Kai. So if you see on the timers, Cobra Kai started a minute 30 down, so they've overtaken the Rhinos. But Cobra Kai have only only started with 4 riders. So, you know, it'll be a big win for them over Rhinos. You know, Rhinos are experienced. TTT team looks like Rhino are down to 3 riders. Fairly sure they started with 4. See Makiva dropping back. So that's going to be tough for Rhino. But I see Cobra Kai doing really well with just 4 riders. They've only lost 5 seconds to BZR, which is absolutely crazy, especially on a downhill. But I think they're going to just slowly start to tire out as this course goes on, as they'll be doing 30 seconds, maybe a minute pulls for some of them. And yeah, that's giving them, you know, the best part of 2 minutes rest at most, maybe just a minute and a half for some of them. Whereas the likes of BZR are going to have up to, you know, 4 or 5 minutes rest between pulls. And that is an absolutely massive difference when you're out on the road, even on these downhills. The best way Cobra Kai can probably do it is just by chilling out a little more on the downhill, having people put bursts in on the front, and just trying to maintain the gap there so they can do the damage on this uphill. But it's good to see them all keeping nice and tight. Hope they'll be on comms and communicating well. We're going to start to see the difference as we head into the second and third lap of what having reduced numbers really means. So we have a quick look at the box on the strongest teams in TT last time, and with all 8 riders, it's great to see. A couple of them haven't been feeling too well this week. One of them came down with COVID. Not one of the riders today, thankfully. But earlier we heard from Snowy earlier in the week. So I hope they're all feeling semi-fresh and pushing on well as they're starting to take times out the teams ahead. So we'll have a look back, and it looks like they've taken time out of ESRT, which is good to see for them. So it looks like ESRT just struggling a little bit here. 20 seconds down on the box. That might just be a great performance from the box, but they're just looking a bit slower up this climb than all the other teams. Are all pretty much below 5 watts per kilo, which, you know, is still great for B teams like this. It's one thing to say, oh, you know, we expect them to do 5.5 on the front, possibly even 6 on a real hard go, but that's talking the absolute top end teams, the teams that are going to set course records. You know, doing 5 on the front is nothing to be sniffed at. It's still a really great performance from the SRT there, keeping them all together exactly as we like to see. We'll just have a little jump back to the Gooses. So looks like the Gooses have taken 4 seconds, or well, 2-3 seconds over the SRT. It's good to see, especially with small numbers again. And again, Dirty Eagle Flang look like they're absolutely flying. Again, another team with 4 riders. So it's looking all good for the Dirt team so far. Really impressive performance, but again, with 4 riders, they might be able to hold it for now, but it's whether they're going to be able to maintain that as we go on. As we see, as soon as we've hit the downhill, ESRT have just been able to pull away a little bit from the Gooses. So a little bit spread out, but, you know, all within the 5 meters, and that's absolutely fine. A real smooth pace line. And as an experienced team, that's kind of what we'd expect to see from them. So again, you see they're all getting their rest. You know, as I talked about earlier, looking at about 3.2, well, on the flats, 3.2-ish, 3.3 watts per kilo for the Bs in the pack. Maybe they can get down to about 3 if they're heavier, but they're the kind of numbers you'd expect to see them when they're in the pack, supposedly resting. See some real big numbers from them on the front, real good pushes to get through. So then, and this one, the kind of tough things, even if you hit the top of the climb, you've got these little flatter sections and these -1-2%, and then you have this little kick just before the bridge, which is really hurting. You know, you've just got there, you're just starting to recover, and then people have to bomb it over here. I can't describe how horrible that is to deal with to you. But they're doing quite well here, just missing a second wheel, just that gap's just starting to open up, but you saw instantly they were reacting. Andreas Jalsig there, instantly on it. Still the gap's a little bit open, and he's in a bit of no man's land here. I'll just get a bit of a wider shot so you can see. So he's a very experienced rider, and just see he just eases off to 2 watts per kilo. The front rise is eased off as well, but as soon as he knew he was filling that gap, he's just slowed up, let himself sit in the middle now. He's going to take over his pull, and hopefully Lindqvist here is just going to push now, give a little burst and just fill this gap. But so that was the difference. The Watt Fabric rider there that we saw, I think, was it Watt Fabric rider? I can't remember. Filled that gap and allowed it to close. Now Rob Nansen and Carlson there were coming through quite quickly, and they have closed it, but it's just not quite as smooth, not quite as experienced. And again, they're small amounts, but they add up because these things happen over and over and over again in TTTs. I'll just take another quick look at Rhino. Doing very well for 3 of them. They're going to have to be very good on comms here because it is tough. With only 3 riders, any gap that appears can be devastating. And so they're going to have to be very cautious with pulls and taking over pulls. See Teresa coming through here. You'd like to see her probably saving herself a little bit more on the downhill, but with 3 riders, it's going to be a challenge. Because, you know, 250 watts, yeah, and struggling to get above 45 kilometers now. As they take a look at the box, and they're at 49 in the pack, 50, and it's just that difference in speed is huge. So, you know, Teresa might be pushing hard, but because she's a lighter rider, she isn't able to do quite the same, especially on a downhill. It's quite interesting to see the different sets of bike choices we have. We've got Teresa on his disc, you know, as kind of as aero as possible. Carsten TL, a bit of a heavier rider, going for the Tron and a bit of an in-between. And then Kirby, who's gone for a more of an aero bike. I think it's kind of playing to their strengths there. Obviously, Teresa's going to need to be as aero as possible just to stick with them, and up the climb she's going to be absolutely fine holding on. Whereas the other 2 riders need to have a bit more of a balance. You know, things like that do come into bike choice a lot. I'll take a bit of a look at the box, see how they're getting on. So they've got all 8 riders still. Seem to be motoring away, really organised. Clinton at the front, exactly what I'd expect. 5.2, 5.1. Little bit inconsistent on the numbers, but only fractionally. And, you know, compared to some of the teams we saw earlier, that's absolutely spot on. We like to see people a bit more consistent. We just saw there, no one's on the front. And that's kind of the issues that we start to face when teams aren't quite as experienced. See there, James pushing through, and on the other rides also coming through. One thing you might notice is they've changed their first names to numbers, try and keep that pull order a bit easier to follow. But as we saw there, it seems to have fallen apart a little bit. Whether that was Demo there, skipping a pull, potentially, after the climb. But now they seem to have got a bit more in pull order to see Bryce just taking over, and that was much better there from Bryce. We want to see them taking over before they stop on the front. You don't want a rider to suddenly pause when they're on the front, because that just slows the team down. While the riders behind who are going to take the next pull are going to hit the front, they're going to do so probably at the speed they want to pull at, not higher. And so you're not going to inject any pace, and especially on a downhill. You're going to be constantly injecting pace onto the front, speeding up, speeding up. See, they're just slowly catching into Cobra Kai here. So Cobra Kai have dropped a little bit of time now on BZR, as you'd expect. When you're down to 4 rides, it's going to hurt. But it looks like the box are absolutely flying. Taking about 15 seconds, if not more, over BZR. So there's a 2-minute gap to begin with, and we're down to about 1:45. See Michael, is it? I'm not sure if this is Michael, but it's Michael from What Fabric. Just seemed to drop off. See, absolutely dead level between Valhalla and What Fabric here. Although, given the gaps, it looks like the box are going to be in first place at the moment, which is great to see. Really good performance from them so far. Let's just see if we can maintain. See there, What Fabric look like they're just doing a little bit too much work in the pack. See Herzl pushing through at 4. Maybe he's trying to get into second wheel there. Not quite sure, but he's again, look at the back. Riders doing 4 and a bit. Gaps have opened up. 4, 5, getting back on. And that's going to hurt them. And it's little moments like that, as I keep saying, just add up. And with the top TTT teams, especially if you're on TT bikes, where the speeds are, you know, another 2-3 kilometers an hour higher, so any gaps gets amplified massively. You don't tend to see that. And to see, you know, maybe 1 gap at most opening up all race. And so we're seeing a little bit more here. And that's going to start to cost them. As you see, Vikings Valhalla have been a little bit smoother so far from what we saw. They might lose a little bit of time on the climb, but on the flats they do seem to be doing a little bit better. Again, it'll come down to fitness in the end for a lot of it, as both these teams are quite smooth, and it looks like What Fabric from previous results might be a little bit fitter as a whole, a little bit punchier. But again, Vikings going to push them all the way. So as you come through this section, you want to see a bit more punch there. See, a couple of riders are. Rain and Becker's very experienced, just punching over the climb. 7, 6 watts per kilo. But again, you've got to be careful there that he's not dropping the likes of Schultz when they tail towards the back a little bit. They want to be moving as a team and punching together as a team, but it looks like there's just a bit of discontinuity. You see Becker's really pushing hard through here, hitting 6, 7 watts per kilo regularly and then chilling out. You know, things like that don't help. You need to be smooth on the power and consistent, unless he's trying desperately to get to the front, and that's not going to benefit the team. It's just creating little micro gaps. Other people panic there. You see he dropped off just at the wrong time, just as we hit that 8%, he moved back. Now he's just doing a little bit more work to push forward. He's chilled again. It's these constant variances in position just tire the legs, and it starts to add up over the course of, you know, 48, 47 minutes, which is what we're probably expecting for this course. Sweet Valhalla coming through. Just going to drop a bit further back, so you see BZR have lost a couple of seconds to those teams, but you know, it's still early days. We're less than halfway through. I think the telling sign will be towards the end, seeing how many teams can maintain all their riders or close to it. As soon as teams start to drop 2 or 3 riders, it can absolutely mess with it. As you lose the pull order, you don't know who's going when, everyone's on their limit, and it's horrible to see. It's even worse to ride. So you see Cobra Kai here, just seem to have chilled a little bit. See the perks of having a heavier rider in Marshall, really strong rider, but on the heavy side. So for him, he's doing about 4.5 watts per kilo, and that's, you know, 450, 460 watts, and so that can be enough for his pull on the flats, which means he can just save a bit more energy. And it's where having a heavier team does help on these team time trials, especially if you can kind of have a heavy team even across the board. I mean, the key thing is to try and have a bit of consistency across the team. When you have a mixture of really heavy and really light riders, it can be difficult. Having 1 or 2, great, you can kind of adapt your tactics. But when it's a real mixture, it can be very hard. That's why it's having to do totally different pull lengths. and will be working and tiring at different rates. So it's a little bit slow from the box on the front here. I'm not quite sure what's happening. That Bryce is just getting up again. But yeah, in these little times, we've seen a couple of times now the box that they've had someone not quite pulling on the front, and they'll be furious with that themselves. But it does happen, and it's how you respond to it. And we saw them all pushing up there to try and fill it. Bryce doing really well getting up. Maintain that, just good to see. See Snowy coming through him. So I wonder if James there, who's probably meant to be following Bryce, hasn't quite done it. Snowy's going to try and lead up the climbers, one of the kind of leaders in the team. A very experienced team time trialist. I'm sure we'll get a couple of waves as they come past normal teammates from Cobra Kai. Just a reminder, as teams overtake, we kind of expect to see the team ahead just slow down a little bit and the team behind push on a bit. Because we're on a climb here, there's very little draft, so we may not see that happen quite so much, and it's very hard to judge. You know, here it looks like they're right on them, but actually there's 2-3 seconds gap. As we see now, they're starting to move through. I think it'll be as we hit the next uphill, they're going to move through as a bunch. But you've got to be really careful. 2 goers, 1. See just little gaps. Andreas, you saw him punching maybe 7 bit watts per kilo a few seconds ago. He's punching 9 again now. It's a bit of bizarre, I'm not sure what's going on there, but he's dropped his team for a few seconds. They're just starting to make it back up. Again, Box seems to have slowed down a bit on this climb. I wonder if they're just losing a few. I saw Demo now off the back. Clinton's falling towards the back. And I think that really hard start started to hurt them. They've really killed it so far, but dropping down to 6 before the climb on the second lap could be devastating for them. Yeah, it's going to be very hard coming through Cobra Kai here. As you know, they're probably going to be chilling out, trying to get some rest. And I wonder if they just put out a call just to wait. Let's regroup, let's have a little bit of rest, and then move through as one. So Aben dropping a little bit. Got a little bit of discord here. There's 2 of the riders at the front. Bryce and Snowy have just got into the draft. And so now they just kind of need to either move through or just drop back to the rest of their riders. So this is where it's a bit difficult when you're overtaking. You're kind of caught in 2 minds. And now we see the classic yield call. As you know, they're overtaking. Cobra Kai need to slow down a bit and let them cleanly pass. But you know, if you're a Cobra Kai rider, do you really want to slow down as you're coming into a climb? I can totally understand them not doing so. See a couple of waves. Good sense of humours from teammates. See there, the gap's opened up and now Cobra Kai are just going to start pushing on all over again. But that time gap, that kind of messing around there will have hurt the box. They have gained 25 seconds over BZR, which is good to see. But you know, BZR have lost 10 over Valhalla, and Valhalla are still close with Watt Fabric. So you know, it looks like there's still gain 25, 15-second advantage for the box, but now they're down to 6. That gap could really start to fall. See, BZR have come over cleanly as a group, which is good to see. It's like Valhalla are also together. We saw Watt Fabric, I'm sure, will be together. So, you know, now Boxer are a rider down on the other team, so it's how they're going to respond to this. They've got a bit of time in hand, but you know, they've got to get to the downhill first. I think if I was in their position now, I'd just be saying, let's just get to the downhill, keep pushing to the downhill, and then we're going to really rest up on the downhill. Maybe sacrifice, you know, two kilometers an hour on that downhill. It's not going to make a ton of difference. It might cost them, you know, 2-3 seconds, but then they're all going to get a really good rest, and they can attack the last lap hard together. The important thing is they've got to get there first without costing themselves too much. To see Vegard taking another big pull for the Vikings here. So it looks like they've just chilled out, so he's not quite pulling at the level he saw on the first lap or even on the second, well, on the kind of this part last lap. It's just the numbers are a little bit down. Just wonder if some of the riders behind are starting to struggle, and they've just made the call just to ease off a little bit. Just make sure they're actually getting some proper rest. See, that's Greg Pierce, Dave here, up well above 3 watts per kilo at times. And that's just not enough. They really need to just chill out in the pack, because they're just moving forward. You see here, Greg's just slowly moving forward. And it's unnecessary, unless he's meant to be in second wheel or pulling. He's just wasting energy doing that. See there, he's responding, just easing back down, knowing he's not doing anything. But you know, now they've got no one on the front. See Dave pushing through. And see, so they are having some problems with comms, which can be a real killer. But they've got all 8 riders still. They can afford to lose people. So imagine when we hit the climb next time, they're going to go really aggressively. Just going to follow BZR for a little bit, see how they're doing. So just coming the downhill again. They're pulling a little bit harder, a little bit more aggressively, but it's probably around the same wattage as Valhalla ahead. They're 15 seconds down now. It's going to start to tell, you know, that BZR are not quite as heavy a team on average as Valhalla. And it does impact on the downhills. See, that gap to box is just staying nice and consistent. I imagine the box do have a bit of a weight advantage over BZR, and you'd expect them to take a bit of time out of them, even down to 6 on the downhill. But as we come out these punchier sections, see, just not seeing it from BZR. As we're hitting this 2%, I'd like to see them all up at 4, maybe 4.5 watts per kilo, just punching over it. You know, we saw teams flying through here at 45, 46 kilometers an hour last lap, and they're down at, you know, 38, 39. And this is where they're starting to really lose time on the other teams. You know, you want to maintain that speed. You're up at 50 kilometers an hour. Hold on to it as long as possible. Take advantage of it. It's essentially free speed for you. You know, if you drop down, you're going to have to push again to get up again, and that takes more work. It's a lot more energy to kind of change your speed and increase your speed than it is just to hold on to the speed you already have. Let's just start the box a little bit further back. We'll try and follow them through this section and look at some teams a bit further down. See some nice punches from Cobra Kai there as they're coming through. So, is that Cobra Kai overtaking the box again? I'm surprised we've not seen a yield call. But you know, these things can happen. Heavier riders, and you know, teams that have rested up a little bit, not gone so hard in certain places, just going back through. And it's a difficult one to kind of judge, and you know, where do the rules stand on that? But yeah, it looks like they've done it really well there with 2 clean overtakes, and it's very impressive because a lot of times when you're coming on a downhill, you just end up bunched up as a group. Here would be 10 riders. That can be very hard. Just see some some of the riders just bridging across a little bit. We've got to make sure they're all going together. So they should be just pushing a little bit harder through here, doing a little bit more work. They're trying to rest a bit too much still on the flats. The teams just aren't quite reacting. I think, you know, you're at this point, you're a bit drained physically, you're going to be mentally not quite thinking straight, and they need to be pushing hard through this flatter section. Get across the flats, you've got plenty of rest coming on the downhill. You know, you want to do the work now. See Snowy starting to take it up at the front for them, Graham on his wheel. And see, there we go, they're just starting to push again, building speed. But they're just a little bit sluggish on it from what I'd like to see from the box. Yeah, they're still doing well, all credit to them, but they could be a little bit quicker if they're just playing a bit more sensibly at the moment. Just see BZR coming to another one of these sections where it just lifts up. Yeah, they're coming in at 54 kilometers an hour, right? Let's see what they can hold on to here. See, none of them are above 4 watts per kilo. They're at 3%, no one above 4. There we go. Van Wynn's starting to go. You know, you're at 3% doing 40 kilometers an hour. You could have held on to 45 then if you punched through. And you're going to be straight into a downhill. You've recovered enough, hopefully, by now that you can attack through. It's just little things like that are costing them. So now, you know, 20 seconds down on Valhalla. So Valhalla have put in a real shift here. They've caught up Watt Fabric by 7 seconds. It's going to be very interesting to see how this goes with them. As Watt Fabric are just coming through the finish banner, so they've got 1 lap to go now. So it looks like Watt Fabric might have lost another ride. They're down to 6 here. I'm not sure what's gone on there. I haven't seen one fall through the group. But I thought they... Maybe I miscounted. I think they did start with 7 actually. So the one they did lost them down to 6. We see the advantage Valhalla have here by starting with 8 and maintaining 8. On the downhill, they're going to be taking tons of time out of teams. And we see Valhalla look like they're pretty much level now with the box. I think maybe box have a 5 seconds advantage now, but they're just taking it in slowly. See teams trying to get a little bit of super tuck in there. See here, the box, absolutely, this is exactly what I wanted to see from the other teams. Look at them, 5.5, 6 watts per kilo, punching up the 3% section. And exactly as I said, 45 kilometers an hour. They're maintaining that speed, and it's so important. You know, that's 4 kilometers an hour over what we saw the other teams doing, just because they put in this little punch here. And then they're back to normal pulls now. And soon they're going to be into the downhill. They might even be able to get a little super tuck later on in this section. But it's really impressive Cobra Kai. Taken 4 seconds back out of the box. And, you know, with 4 riders, it's super impressive. Really well done. See, Ali's starting to punch through. I think that might have been an attempt to see Sean going with him, where they're trying to go really aggressively here to get into a super tuck. They should be able to go now if they tuck now. See, Ali's gone for it a little bit prematurely. But there we go. Now into a quick super tuck. They've got a couple of seconds to get some rest into the legs. They want to be coming back out early, so they should be out now. Just leaving it a little bit late here. See Ali, Marshall there, they need to be out early at -2%. They're slowing down here. Now they might have been trying to get across in one go, but you know they've lost 2-3 kilometers an hour speed there. Little punches we saw from Andreas and others might have helped them. You know, one thing you've got to be aware of when you're going for these super tucks, you've got to get out early, especially in a team time trial. It's just far too risky to stay in late. Lots of people have issues with super tucks on trainers. Sometimes trainers don't start up properly. They get caught in a gear. And so you want to get out just early. You're not going to do any harm. Yeah, it might cost you a second or two recovery, but you could easily cost 5-10 seconds the other way if you don't get out right, if something terribly goes wrong. So I'm always kind of a person just don't risk it. Get out early. Just do a pedal at 2 watts per kilo until it hits the flats again. And then start really going. And always when you're coming out, push hard out, maintain that speed. See here's... I'm not sure what is quite going on. I don't know if Rhino are re-overtaking ESRT. So it is ESRT overtaking Rhino. But on the downhill it's so hard. And I have every sympathy for Rhino here. I know ESRT are going to say to draft. And they're totally right in doing so. But it's very hard. One thing we shouldn't be seeing here is Teal from Rhino pushing hard through. It doesn't look like you're at 2 watts per kilo, I'm not going to lie. But anyhow, it's one of those things that happens, and there's not much they can do about it either way. It's better that people just concentrate on their own riding and let the race organiser sort any issues afterwards. I don't think it's going to make or break the race for either of those teams. See, really good work there from Teresa and Kirby just to slow off. We just need Teal to go a little bit earlier as he's just holding on. You know, obviously you don't want to go down to 0 watts per kilo. Like, I totally understand why, but early was pushing 5.5, so let's just want him to just let off a little bit here. Let ESRT get that gap, and then ESRT need to push a bit more. See Jarlsig doing really well there, pushing away from the back to try and break that to help out Teal. But it's a difficult position to be in. I have a lot of sympathy for every team involved in these overtakes on downhills. Sometimes it is totally impossible. So yes, they're doing well with 5 riders here. Now they've lost a bit of time to some of the other teams, but they are going to be beating others. Just take a little bit further look back at the likes of the Goosters. The Goosters started 30 seconds behind ESRT. I think Oberg's on his own. So it looks like ESRT have taken time out on the Goosters, which they'll be disappointed with, especially after a good performance last season. And Eagle Fang have taken quite a bit of time out of the Goosters, about 22 seconds. So they're going to be very happy with that performance, especially with the 4 of them. After one of their riders mysteriously upgraded last race. Sure there weren't any complaints to event control about him. And just taking a look back at HISP. So it's really good to see HISP being a bit more competitive on this. And they're going to be having a tough fight with OTR. In fact, it looks to me like HISP will have overtaken OTR, so it's OTR skid marks. And it looks like HISP, who started 30 seconds behind, are going to be 45 seconds up on them, having overtaken. Got a lot of riders together, and it might be one of those where they've kind of said they're just going to keep all the riders together. I think they're a bit of a lighter team, but very much pushing the top of Cat B threshold, so it's really good for them. This course is probably going to be quite well suited with a long climb, but they're going to hurt a little bit on the downhill. By the looks of things, they don't quite have the TTT experience. They seem very bunched up. And so one thing for them, if they watching, they just need to have kind of a bit more of a solid 1, 2, 3, or at least 1 or 2 rides ahead of the group just on their own, because in this bunch they're going to be costing themselves, 8 to 10% by sitting in that second, third wheel with a couple of riders, because that's a saving. It's about 8% from going from first to second to, from going from second to third wheel or third to fourth wheel. Just see him pushing through. This is much better there from them, one rider really going for it. And this is what you can see on the downhill. You want to see them just punching aggressively. You get plenty of rest in the pack. They're just doing a little bit too much work here. On a minus 4%, we saw lots of teams super tucking. Can't see any of the HISP riders super tucking here. See one even sprinting. So they need to play it a little bit more sensibly, making sure they're getting as much rest as possible on these steep downhills. Obviously you want to see one rider pushing, but the rest should all be at 1.5 watts per kilo, if not super tucking. And that's where the top teams again make it to count. Just take a quick look with OTR here. So it looks like they're just down on numbers. They are pushing a bit at the front, and again they're a bit bunched up on the downhills and assemble, but it means those behind, you see again 3 and a bit watts per kilo. They're not getting the rest they should be, and if we go and look at some of the top teams, they're going to be getting a lot more. I don't think we've actually got any left on the downhill. See a lot of them hitting the climb for their final time. Try and get all the way up to the front with Watt Fabric. And so it looks like Watt Fabric have taken another 2 seconds back on Valhalla, but it's still that 5-second gap. So it's going to be very close coming to the finish, as they've reached top of the climb. So, it's all to play for on the downhill. 4 seconds can easily be caught up. But again, it looks like Watt Fabric are down to 5 riders now, so they've lost one more. Chris Hertzl, it seems, on the climb. Whereas Valhalla, they've lost Bosco Uribe. They're down to 6 riders, so they must have lost 2 riders on that climb. Unless I'm missing someone. Again, they can see the numbers ahead of them. I'd say it's in Valhalla's hands massively here. They know what's going on. They know they have this gap. But they just need to be a bit more aggressive. See on the front, 2 watts per kilo, 2.5. I don't know if they're trying to let someone back on. But someone needs to take charge here. See Greg, absolutely perfect, leading from the front. Really big credits to him there. It's really hard when you get to this point. You've come to the top of a horrid climb. Everyone's suffering. No one wants to take it from the front. But someone just has to go. If Greg goes here for 30 seconds, sacrifices himself, that's going to be perfect for the team. Obviously, they'd love for him to sacrifice himself, then keep on the back. But, it's this point, right, you've got 2-3 kilometers left. Most of it's downhill. If we have to sacrifice someone and still have 5 riders, absolutely fine. Just to mean that everyone else can recover and maintain that speed. So you see, they just need a little push up on this uphill. Just to dig a little bit deeper for some of them. See Ben Buckby leading a bit more from the front as a lighter rider, which is good to see. Just injecting a bit of pace over the top. And now he's got to be very careful as he watches the gap behind him. Because he's a lighter rider, he can open up quite easily. And so we want to make sure that he's not quite opening up that gap too much. He should be okay there, 4 meters. Really well done from him. He's watched that meticulously, I think. Making sure he's not going too far while injecting the pace as they're starting to come into the downhill. Really well done to them. So you see here, BZR, they look like they're a bit back on both teams. I wonder how close the Box and Cobra Kai are. So again, it looks like Cobra Kai have managed to hold off the Box. Really, really strong from Cobra Kai. So Box are ahead on time. But, that's going to be a real statement to manage to hold away from them. See Snowy and is it Aben up the road? Really good from him. But, he needs to get back with the team now. And quickly, see Bryce has gone off the back, so they're down to 5 riders. The Box will want to maintain all of them over the top. I guess it's going to be some motivation to see if they can catch Cobra Kai in the downhill. The important thing now is just to get together. They really need to be tighter than this. Aben needs to slow down to, 1.5 watts per kilo. Let everyone back on, work together. We need to stop working individually. There we go. And again, we need these rides at the back. Let's Graham just to push through now. Inject the pace from the back. Make sure everyone's benefiting the draft as you come through. But like a lot of the other teams are just caught in this no man's land here. And it's a painful place to be. So just going to head back. So a couple of teams are going to be approaching the finish in the next 5 or so minutes. Let's see what Fabric have lost even more time to Valhalla here. It is tight. It's not like, they absolutely screwed. And looks like BZR have pulled back a little bit. They're definitely hurting. And you've got, oh, they do look like their gaps are starting to open up a little bit. They've got to be cautious here. See Killian Van der Biel not doing very well there. He's pushing forward to the front, but not paying attention to what's around him. So if you look, they opened up this 5-meter gap. Really good from Van Cutsem there. He just slowed up, filled that gap, allowing the people to get back on the front. But it looks like Killian Van der Biel was meant to be pulling there and wasn't in the right position. And that's the point where it's really important to communicate. You need to shout up to your team and let them know, you know, hey, I'm going to have to move forward, it's my pull, can people watch this gap? Or, you know, I'm moving up, come with me. Call out riders, talk to them, and work together. Again, it looks like they've just been caught out with nobody pulling on the front. 4 watts per kilo isn't enough to be injecting pace. All the other teams ahead, you know, see Greg Pierce here pushing 6 watts per kilo as we're starting to go into the downhill. And then we're looking at Berkman's here, 3. You know, they're just... I just want to urge them on, kind of encourage them, but, you know, they just need to be doing more. Individual riders just need to be doing more for them. They can afford to have a hero pull. Someone just sacrifices them now, lets everyone else rest. And, you know, that is the solution a lot of the time with this. Is you've got enough riders sacrifice someone, keep the speed up while everyone else gets some rest, and then go again, reset, and push. See Valhalla really closing down that gap to Watt Fabric now. It was not a nice day to be a Watt Fabric rider, seeing that behind you. Down to 5 riders. Gaps are just starting to open up. You see, this one, the issues when you get down to these numbers. People pull, they drop a bit too far back. So I always say it's important, even if you have your 8th rider not doing any pulls whatsoever all race and just hanging on, they provide a bit of depth, which means when you finish your pull on the front, you don't have to punch as hard to get back on. And things like that just make a difference. You see here, Matches is just having to push heavily again. He's just probably pulled. He's having to work really hard to maintain. You see again, really good from the team. They are punching over that little in-between, holding up to 45 kilometers an hour as we want to see. But let's see what Valhalla can do here. Looks like they're really motoring through now. Taking a second every 30 seconds or so. See, holding at 46. Again, so a kilometre an hour quicker than Watt Fabric at the same point. And it starts to add up, you know, back up to 47 already. And they're really starting to go here. It's absolutely imperious performance from Valhalla. Super impressive. Just a pity Chris isn't here to help them out. So we head back, looks like Bizarre are starting to really flag. You know, the other teams around them aren't necessarily catching them massively, but you see they've just lost Van Wyn off the back. He's having to work really hard. And you see these errors happening more and more as riders get tired. No one wants to pull at the front. No one's kind of thinking about their positioning on the road. And it just starts to fall apart a little bit. See Cobra Kai still holding off the box. Box aren't going to be happy with this. Even if it's just a bragging rights at the end, they're going to want to come through them. And they are going to be losing time overall. They're now 130 down. Just over 130 down on BZR. So they're 30 seconds up on BZR overall. But they're going to be 4 seconds down on Valhalla. It's nice and tight as you see Watt Fabric just coming into the finish. A nice big sprint from them. I like to see, and it looks like they've gone quite early. Which is as you'd expect to see Valhalla there. They're getting close, and again, absolutely perfect work from Valhalla. They're going early. They're not waiting for the last few seconds to sprint for the line. They're pushing really hard from the back and working together. You know, they shouldn't be saving stuff. A minute out, you should be pushing really hard. Big credits to Valhalla there. Absolutely textbook TTT performance. And I think they're going to rightly take the win. What'll be interesting to see is whether Box can pip them, or I think what will be more like to happen is it's going to be Valhalla in first, Box in second, Watt Fabric in third, and perhaps BZR in fourth. Or I'm not sure where Cobra Kai are going to fit into this. So they were started 1 minute 30 behind BZR, and they're 1 minute 20 behind. So Cobra Kai might also get behind BZR. So we're going to see some real changes on the leaderboard. I think Valhalla are going to be really happy if Box can get in ahead of Watt Fabric, catch up 2 points in the league table for them. I think we need to give big credit to the Box. While they've had this kind of tougher middle section and Cobra Kai have pushed on, that's not because the Box are doing anything wrong or bad. It's because Cobra Kai are absolutely killing it as well. You see them motoring over at 6 watts per kilo. You know, they've lost a kilometre an hour over Valhalla through that section. maybe 2, but you know, they're still really pushing hard. And with 4 riders, it's just absolutely bonkers performance. You know, at least the likes of Box started off with 8, but all credit to Cobra Kai. They'll definitely be the highest placed team with 4 riders, probably the highest placed team with 5 or 6 riders. We see the Box close it to 5 seconds. If I'm there, I'm encouraging the team. I'd be, you know, you're wanting them to catch. See if you can get Cobra Kai. You've got, you know, a kilometre left. Can you make that gap? I want to start working now. We've got 5 riders. Get someone pushing to the front and just sacrificing themselves. Someone should be pulling at 5-6 watts per kilo here. You're a minute out, well, not even a minute out from the line. They should not be super tucking. I know they need the rest, but they shouldn't be. They should be pushing through, pushing that speed up, and just being aggressive. Cobra Kai, 10 watts per kilo out from the lines. You know, they're going really hard, maintaining that speed. See Snowy doing the same. It's exactly what I wanted to see from Snowy. Just go aggressive from here. You're not gaining anything. You're so close to the line, you might as well go all in. See, again, punching through. I see Cobra Kai just about to hit the segment, coming through the line again. Really aggressive from them. Very strong finish. We're going to have the same for the Box, but can the Box get up now? They need to be up already. The other teams are already high. I think it's going to be tight between the Box and Watt Fabric now. Just punching through. Really good seeing they're going to have all 4 across the line pretty much together. So apologies to the rest of the teams. I'm probably going to have to leave quite soon. Really big credit to them. I'm going to try and take a quick look at the results before I go. Or at least the rough live results. Let's see what we can get up for you. So, just going to put the results on the tail so hopefully you can see that 15 seconds, Valhalla beat Watt Fabric by 15 seconds. There's a comfortable distance over Beezer. I'm just going to refresh the page again, see if we can get any more through. Looks like they're not quite coming through. Take us back, we can see the gap to Box. So the Box started 3 minutes behind Watt Fabric, and that's these guys. So if we look, looks like they've pipped Watt Fabric, but they're about 3 seconds behind Valhalla. So a really good performance by the Box. Probably coming in second, so it'll be Valhalla first, the Box in second, Watt Fabric in third. Well done to everyone taking part today. Sorry I couldn't stay for longer, and we'll hopefully see you all for the double bill next Tuesday night, where we'll be having Richmond Worlds course as points race, followed immediately by Harrogate Worlds as an ITT.